talk about that. Instead, what they want to do now is they want to make it easier because we're afraid of the stigma. The stigma, oh my God, the stigma of drug use and maybe having been arrested. You know what? I should see if I can't get some people on this show, Nick, who have been in that life, homeless, addicted to drugs, who would come. I'm seriously, I'm going to talk to a few people I know who have lived this themselves, who would be happy perhaps to come on the show and to tell people, thank God I got arrested.
Yeah.
Thank God somebody cared enough to pull me off the street, throw me into a cell for a while. Okay, doesn't happen all the time. Okay, but anybody who says that it doesn't help, okay, they don't know what they're talking about. And
well, it's so frustrating, Joseph, because look, I completely agree with you, of course, but this fuzzy-headed thinking, as you put it, it's not just fuzzy-headed thinking, it's fatal. These are real people in far greater numbers. I mean, the opioid crisis is a real crisis. Now, it's not contagious in the way that COVID is, or the way that the influenza is, or any other disease. That's true. But if we're worried about numbers, what are we doing? Like, how is it we have to put on a mask to walk into a store? When you walk up to the counter, the clerk is wearing a mask. There's a plexiglass screen between you and him, and you're wearing a mask. This is what they want you to do. Now, if you stop and think about it, that's a mask here, glass here, another mask there, and everybody else in the store's got a mask on. But there's people out in the street freezing because now it's getting into winter, and you've got them homeless, and they're addicted to drugs, and they're going to die. There's no doubt about it. If things don't change for them, many of them will die. And it's a lot more than we're going to lose through COVID. But we have to jump through all these stupid hoops when we're talking about masks and sanitizing and every 30 seconds washing your hands in case a germ lands on it. I mean, come on. It's enough to make you just... I walk in there, all this stuff goes through my head, and I have to bite my tongue because I don't want... it's not the clerk's fault. There's no point raging at the clerk. It's like getting mad at the gas jockey for the price of gas. He didn't set the price. But I want to get mad at somebody, whoever's responsible for this mess, because none of it makes any sense. And yet thousands and millions of people never put two brain cells together and say, why do we do this? Okay, I'm done my rant now.
And you did it without even banging on your typewriter.
Damn it!
No, it is. And it's a serious problem, Nick, and I don't. It's frustrating that people on the right of the political spectrum, our friends in the conservative movement and the conservative parties, do not make a big enough stink about this. And again, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to want to stick around for part 4, or if you're listening to the podcast, you're going to want to listen to part 4. If it hasn't been posted yet, it will be posted soon, because this is not the only example of a society and our governing class. And let's call it that, Nick. Let's call it what it really is. We like to talk about how we have a classless society, okay? And conservatives in particular like to talk about how we have a classless society. We don't need to get into class warfare stuff. But you know what? We really don't have a classless society, Nick. We have two classes. We have the government and the governed. And the government is taking far too many advantages over the rest of us. And when I talk about the government, with all due respect to my friends out there and family who are public servants, okay, with all due respect to them, and I know there are a lot out there that actually do good work and they care. I know that it's, you don't want to paint everyone with the same brush. But the fact of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, that if you're a public servant, you're living off of me, and you're living off of Nick, and you're living off of the rest of us who are actually creating wealth. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you're also performing a very important job, probably, or possibly. So it's not that you're living off of us and it's parasitic. That's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making here is that I wish that that people would see that. And then we have the bureaucrats, the do-gooders. In the words of John Mortimer, members of the alleged caring professions, who also work for the public service, who just thrill, they revel in making these rules or in tearing down existing rules because they know better. Now, maybe they do from time to time, but I have to tell you, I'm getting older now, Nick, and you're starting to get long in the tooth when you can express your years of experience, your experience not just in years or even decades, but in fractions of centuries. You know
That's
what I mean?
True.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly, and I can do the same thing.
Okay.
Yep.
The fact is, when I look back on all of the innovations that I've seen in my life, very few of them have turned out to be beneficial for society. Very few of them. And what we're witnessing now is, I look at this and I'm saying it's like society starting to spin out of control. You know, you're doing.
I think when it would.
You like the airplane analogies, right, Nick? Well, here's the thing about airplanes. If you're a pilot, you'll get this. When you put your plane into a spin, it will continue to spin downward, but it will never be out of control. You can in most cases you can pull out of a spin, and the speed is constant. You'll reach a velocity, and it will never increase. And you'll just go spinning down, 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 down. Okay, so in a way, it actually is, in many instances, very controlled. But when you go into it, but when you do a spiral dive, that's something different entirely. And
that's right.
And you don't reach a speed and then never increase. You continue to put more stress on your airframe. You continue to go faster and faster, and eventually, you may not even make it to the ground. You may end up just breaking up from the excessive stress on the aircraft.
Yeah, now, your wings rip off, and that's the end of you.
Now, that, maybe people are out there going, what's he talking about? Airplanes, spins, spiral dives? The point I'm making here is, okay, I could make a better analogy if you want. Think about when you flush the toilet. I mean, if that's the direction you want to go, but that's the direction I feel we're going right now, Nick, and nobody wants to just sort of stand up and say, stop this craziness, okay, please. And
everybody's enjoying the ride to the ground. They just don't want the impact.
And I just can't help but make the observation, Nick, that this is all government induced. This is all top down. If you just leave common people alone to live their lives, minimal government, I'm not saying no government, minimal minimal interference, let people figure it out. People are pretty good at this, okay? Human beings are pretty good at this. And I think I mentioned it last week, Nick. This is the difference between conservatives and progressive liberals and everybody on the left. If you're a real, genuine conservative, first and foremost, you believe in people, for better or worse. I'm not naive. I know how bad people could get and how bad people could be. But I know how good people could be as well. And for better or for worse, for good or bad, okay, the only way you have a long-term stable society is when you just let people be. Have a set of laws, have a basic government, because we all live in a society. But other than that, leave people be.
Joseph, you're singing out of my hymn book, buddy.
Well, Nick, all I could say is, I hope I'm singing. I hope that the notes I'm singing are better than, I don't know. somehow or other, that joke got lost, which means it must be break time. So we'll be back. We'll be back in a few minutes. If you're listening to the live show, stay with us. You do not want to miss segment number 4, because it gets even worse. If you want to feel bad, it gets worser and worser. Okay, so we'll be back in a few minutes here on the Nick and Joe Show on ThinkRadio.ca.